G'day guys, JB here. The NBA season has finally come to an end. The Golden State Warriors have climbed the top of the mountain once again, defeating the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. That's the big story coming out of the playoffs. An even bigger story, Steph Curry finally winning that elusive Finals MVP trophy. Many have thought, including myself, that he should already have one, potentially two under his belt, but to finally get one there and prove all the haters wrong has been massive for him. We'll get to that series very shortly. Let's have a playoff breakdown here, and then we'll get into the finals. Of course, going back to the first round, we'll look at the Western Conference first round. It was Phoenix defeating New Orleans 4-2 in a nice, exciting 6-game series. Phoenix and New Orleans going game for game. Of course, it took Phoenix to win back-to-back in Game 5 and 6 to seal the series there. Of course, New Orleans competing really hard. It looked like they were going to force a Game 7, but Phoenix, that 64-win team, just able to compose themselves and get things in the bag. Of course, Chris Paul leading the way in that series. Devin Booker only playing the 3 games, but Chris Paul, 22.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 11.3 assists on 56.7 from the field. He was massive. DeAndre Ayton stepping up as well, 20.5 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 2.5 assists on 70% shooting. Of course, Mikal Bridges having a good season. A rounded 17, 5 and 3 on 51%. Devin Booker, some good contributions there as well. He shot 50, 48, 88 rounded from the field in his 3 games, so 23 a game, along with 4 rebounds, 4 assists. But things just going all the way there for the Suns. Meanwhile, on the other side of the floor, of course, the New Orleans Pelicans, led by Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, looked like they were going to steal a few more games than they did. Poor shooting not helping there. CJ McCollum less than 40% from the field. But Brandon Ingram, 27, 6 and 6, 47.5 from the field, 40.7% from deep. Had a nice series there. Again, Jonas Valanciunas trying to chip in around at 15, 14 and 3 for him. But of course, Phoenix just proving too strong. They moved on to the second round where they ended up facing the Dallas Mavericks. Of course, Dallas got over Utah in a 6-game series there. 4-2. Utah and Dallas splitting the first 4 games 2 apiece before Dallas ran away with the series, led by Jalen Brunson, who played the majority of that series. Of course, only 3 games to Luka as well, but Jalen Brunson, a massive series for him, around at 28, 5 and 4 on 48% from the field. Next best option, playing the maximum amount of games there, Spencer Dinwiddie, 15, 3 and 4 for him on 36% from the field. Of course, Luka was massive though. The 3 games he played, around at 29, 11 and 6. Of course, Dallas making a massive trade in the last couple of days. They managed to secure Christian Wood to throw in the centre for that team as well, and just improve their chances going forward. Of course, on the other side of the floor, Utah Jazz, they've got rid of Quinn Snyder. There's some serious talks that Donovan Mitchell wants out, some serious trade talks as well in the way of Rudy Gobert. We'll see how they unfold in the off-season there. Donovan Mitchell leading the way, 25.5 points, 4.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, pedestrian shooting, 39.8. Bojan Bogdanovic, 18 points and 4 rebounds, chipping in there as well. Jordan Clarkson didn't start, coming off the bench with 17.5 points, and Rudy Gobert, the other key contributor, 12 points, 13 rebounds, only the 1 block. We'll see what happens with Utah. The talk was that Quinn Snyder was going to try and get that Lakers job. He's obviously not keen on that. There is some talk that he may be keen on the Spurs job. We're not sure whether that will work going forward. But of course, Dallas went on to face Phoenix in the second round. Your other matchup in the first round of the Western Conference, the Memphis Grizzlies taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. They managed to win that series 4-2. Of course, the big highlight out of that series was that massive Ja Morant poster dunk. That'll be talked about for some time to come. Of course, Memphis had the 2-1 series lead. Minnesota winning Game 4, but Game 5 and 6 belonging to the Grizzlies, leading the way there from Memphis. And again, we're going to talk about all the games played, as their key contributors. Desmond Bane leading the way realistically there in that one. In the scoring department, at least 23.5 points, 4.2 rebounds, had a 50-40, nearly a 50-50-90 series, had 50-40-90 there. Ja Morant, really inefficient, but 21.5 points, well, around at 22, 9 and 11. on the series there. But again, pedestrian, 38.6% from the field, only 20% from deep, and 7 of 10 from the stripe. Good contributions from Dylan Brooks, 16.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, 2.3 assists. Brandon Clark as well, 16.5 points, 9 rebounds, 2.7 assists. Of course, Jaren Jackson Jr. not doing as much as would have been like, but 2.7 blocks was handy there as well. On the other side of the floor, Minnesota had their ups and downs. There were some really positive signs coming through at one point. Karl-Anthony Towns looking like he was doing a bit. Also looked like D'Angelo Russell stepping up. Pat Bev doing a fair bit. But, of course, wasn't to be. Anthony Edwards leading the way. 25.2 points, 4.2 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal and a block each. Around that 46% mark from the field. Karl-Anthony Towns around at 22, 11 and 2. Shot around a rounded 49, 46 and 86. D'Angelo Russell chipping in with 12.7 assists there, and Patrick Beverley 11.5 assists. Things just weren't able to get it done for Minnesota. They showed glimpses where they looked like they were going to be really, really strong and really take that next step. They just weren't able to get it done. And of course, Memphis, they were a shock team the way they rose through the ranks. I thought that probably would have been good to see their head coach gain Coach of the Year. Wasn't able to get it done. Monty Williams managed to get that. But nonetheless, the Grizzlies got through, managed to advance to the second round. And of course, they took on the Golden State Warriors in that matchup, who had the gentlemanly sweep over the Denver Nuggets, winning that one 1-4. Of course, Denver staying alive there after a 3-0 run. And, the big talk there all of a sudden was, geez, could a team come back from 3-0 down? That just simply wasn't going to happen. Golden State winning the first 3, losing game 4, and solidifying things in game 5. Leading the way, Steph Curry, 28, 3 and 5, 50, 40, 70 shooting there. Klay Thompson, a nice solid series again, only really getting to that 55 game mark, 60 game mark by the end of the playoffs. 22.6 points, 3.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 50, 40, 80 shooting for him. Jordan Poole, a big playoff series for him, 21 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists, 50, 40, 80 shooting for him as well. So really efficient scoring there for the Dubs. In fact, their 7 best scorers, well, in fact, everyone who scored in that series at least 1 point a game, I do believe it is there. No, just looking, Bielitsa also had some rough shooting, but just uber efficient shooting there from the Warriors. They hit all their cylinders at the right time, really put the league on notice and really started to make a move. Other side of the floor there, Nikola Jokic, 31, 13 and 6, the MVP. Had a fair series, but again, when you don't have many weapons at your disposal, not much artillery in the tank, you do often struggle. So again, that gentlemanly series sweep in the way for Golden State. Monty Morris, 14 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists. Will Barton, rounded 14, 6 and 3. Aaron Gordon, rounded 14, 7 and 3. Just not going to get it done. DeMarcus Cousins, limited minutes, managed to get 11 points, 4 rebounds on the board. Denver will be back firing next year, there's no doubt about it. They will be better for it. Nikola Jokic, back-to-back MVPs, really starting to solidify a legacy there. He's probably the greatest Nugget of all time. It's hard to say outright, but he's doing a really good job, and if he continues to build that sort of a resume, it's pretty hard to argue with. Over the Eastern Conference first round matchup between Philadelphia and the Toronto Raptors, and Philly getting the job done there in 6, winning the first 3 games. And of course, the real worry also became of a 3-0 give up here after Toronto won the next 2 games, and then Philadelphia getting things done comprehensively, 35-point margin in game 6 to solidify that one. Joel Embiid around 26, 11 and 2 on 52%. Tyrese Maxey 21, 5 and 5, rounded numbers there, of course, on 50, 40, 90 shooting there. James Harden, very pedestrian, but nonetheless contributed 19, 5 and 10. And a solid effort from Tobias Harris, 18, 10 and 3. Philadelphia have the pieces. It's whether they have the heart and the grit and the determination for it. But managed to get through that nice little series there with Toronto. Toronto really hyped up as a chance, just weren't able to get it done. Pascal Siakam with an All-NBA selection this year. 23, 7 and 6, underperformed if he was going to want to take that next step. Fred VanVleet only playing the 4 games as well, really limited his production there. Scotty Barnes only managing the 4 games as well. So again, plenty of lineups used just purely through a lack of rotations available. OG Anunoby, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists as well there, and Gary Trent Jr. trying to chip in. But for the Raptors, a nice little season. They put together an unexpected season. However, for Philadelphia, getting through the second round was a minimum requirement when you had the runner-up MVP on your team. 4-1 series in the next round we will talk about. That is Milwaukee versus Chicago. Of course, the Bucks getting the job done there. First 2 games split, Milwaukee winning the last 3 pretty comprehensively there. 4-1 series win to the 3rd seed. Giannis, a massive series, rounded 29, 13 and 6, 56% from the field, getting it done. Of course, the big story out of this was knowing that Chris Middleton only played the 2 games, was out for the rest of the series, and certainly out for the rest of the playoffs. Drew Holiday, 16, 5 and 7, as well as Brook Lopez and Grayson Allen chipping in around that 13-point mark, each double-double to Bobby Portis. But of course, the Bucks getting it done with arguably the best player for me, the best player in basketball, leading the way. On the other side of the floor, the questions around Chicago were, could a bunch of players who hadn't had success as individuals have success collectively? We quickly got the answer to that one. Zach LaVine, only the 4 games in the series. Alex Caruso, 4 of the 5 games in the series as well. But DeMar DeRozan, 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Nikola Vucevic, 19 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists. Zach LaVine, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. So for the Bulls, they've clearly got plenty of options there, but they just need some more senior leadership to really try and get that team over the line. For the Bucks, they continued on through to the second round, where they went on to face the Boston Celtics. Of course, Philadelphia went on to face Miami, and that's who we'll talk about next. They won a 4-1 series against the Atlanta Hawks. Miami winning the first 2 games, Atlanta dividing the series up before Miami claiming the final 2. Of course, for the Heat, Jimmy Butler leading the way, a massive playoff run for Jimmy Buckets. Full credit for a guy who did make the finals, rounded 31, 8 and 5 on 3 steals at 54% from the field and 43% from deep. Max Strus, 14 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Tyler Hero, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Bam Adebayo, again, pushing that all-defensive team and that potential All-NBA team, but needed to continue to take a bit more of a step. 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists there. And, of course, Victor Oladipo only playing the 2 games, 14.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Again, you've got a bunch of young guys who want to compete, a bunch of veterans with experience, and a leader who has been known to have a take-no-prisoners attitude, and that seriously managed to get things done pretty comfortably there for the Heat. On the other side of the ball, Trae Young with a really disappointing series by his standards. He only had 15, 5 and 6, rounded on 31.9% from the field. One of the worst playoff efforts by a true superstar and a true leader, a guy who was potential All-NBA first-team caliber this season, just unable to get that done. DeAndre Hunter leading the way, 21.2 points, 3.8 rebounds, and they're your 2 leading players. You are in a world of hurt. There's no doubt about that. And the Hawks falling aside after a massive run last year, just weren't able to double that up. Again, conference finals last year, convincing first round exit this year. No doubt there will be some talks had there in Atlanta. Of course, it is great to see Nate McMillan having some coaching success. I still feel he was wrongly tossed out of Indiana, and of course they've started and continue to blow things up there. Last series in the East, of course, was the Boston Celtics taking on the Brooklyn Nets, and the real threat and worry was Brooklyn being at that level and ready to go. The concern was, in the end, they weren't at that level, they weren't ready to go, and they were absolutely swept out of the playoffs by a Boston team that at that point had made a statement and was ready to go. Led by Jason Tatum, 29.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7.3 assists, a monster series for him. Jaylen Brown backing him up as well, 22.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists. Marcus Smart contributing heavily. Al Horford chipping in where he could. Just a dominant series from Boston, who really put Brooklyn to the sword, and of course that was with Robert Williams missing 2 games. On the other side of the floor, Kevin Durant, with arguably his worst playoff series ever. 26.3 points, 5.8 rebounds and 6.3 assists is one thing. Shooting less than 40% from the field is just unacceptable. When you add in Kyrie Irving having a substandard series at 21, 5 and 5, and not many big contributors out of key players from there on in, you're always going to be in trouble. Now, we are having a different conversation with both the men at the top of the list. Shoot 50%, produce some bigger numbers. We're talking about a 7-game series here, but that really wasn't to be, and Boston just dominated the run there in that series. Even when it looked like the Nets were going to get into it, they just weren't able to. Second round got underway, and that's all the Golden State Warriors defeat the Memphis Grizzlies in 6. Pretty convincing over them in the end. Of course, there were the injury concerns to Memphis, which only saw Ja Morant play 3 games, and many will ask the question about what kind of impact that had. But from the Golden State point of view, Steph Curry, 26, 5 and 6. 41% shooting. It was a lot of subpar shooting in this series. Certainly not what you wanted, but managed to get the job done. Klay Thompson averaging around a 19, 5 and 3. 40% from the field for him wasn't great. Jordan Poole, a really key factor there. 18, 4 and 4. Shooting around that 47% mark. Same with Andrew Wiggins, who really came into his own in these playoffs and really started to show the player that he is. Again, the Warriors getting it done after taking that 3-1 lead. They started to slip in Game 5. Many asked the question, but they answered that one pretty convincingly. As I mentioned, on the other side of the floor from Memphis, Ja Morant only playing the 3 games, had a monster 3 games, 38, 7 and 8 on 50, 40, 80 shooting. Big series there, plenty of passengers to go along the ride as well. It's a shame he didn't play all 6 games, potentially, or 7. May have changed the storyline of the playoffs, certainly of that series. Jaren Jackson Jr. stepping up, 19 points, 6.3 rebounds, 2.3 blocks. Desmond Bain, 14, 3 and 2. Of course, subpar shooting all the way through here, though. Unfortunately, the inefficiency and losing their best player, and arguably one of the 10 best players in the league, was always going to hurt them. And it really kicked them in the backside. But Golden State moved on comfortably through to the Western Conference Finals, but they eventually took on the Dallas Mavericks, who came back from a 2-0 deficit to win in 7 against the Suns. It was 3-2 in favour of Phoenix. Dallas with a massive Game 6. A riot in Game 7. Absolutely dominated the ball. Of course, Luka Doncic leading the way in this series. A rounded 33, 10 and 7. 48% shooting. Just getting it done. Just absolutely dominant at his size. Caused too much of an issue on the perimeter for the Phoenix Suns. Jalen Brunson chipping in 18.7 points, 4.4 rebounds, 3 assists. Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith just trying to do their bit there, but it was the Luka show. It was Luka's world, and they were just living in it. On the other side of the ball, some unacceptable play from Devin Booker, who really fell short. Sub 45% shooting, a 23, 5 and 5. He has been injured, but really subpar. Once you cross that line, you are crowned fit to go, and there really weren't any key contributors from there. Chris Paul only the 13, 4 and 6. DeAndre Ayton struggling at 16 and 8. Jay Crowder 11 and 6. 10 points out of Cam Johnson off the bench. Mikal Bridges struggled at the start. Landry Shamet didn't contribute much in his full 7 games. Neither did Cameron Payne. The Suns just capitulated. When you look at it, a 64-win team wasn't able to get the job done. But again, on the other side of the floor, you are talking about Dallas. Talking about Luka Doncic, and Luka had one of the biggest series, or certainly the biggest playoff series of his career, and carried an unlikely team in Dallas to the Western Conference Finals. On the other side of the floor in the East was Miami, getting over the line over Philadelphia in 6. They made that comfortable in the end there. That 9-point margin of Game 6 really did not reflect the total dominance of the Heat there in that series. Won the first 2 games, lost the next 2, and then comfortably won the next 2 as well. For the Heat, Jimmy Butler again, 27.5, 7.5, 5.5, efficient scoring, just an absolute dogged player, just getting the job done and competing. Bam Adebayo, again, not really stepping up, but again, didn't do too much and contain Joel Embiid well enough to get the win. 16.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 2 assists with some defensive numbers. Tyler Hero contributing a little bit more, 14.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists. You also had double-digit scoring to Strauss, and the 6 games that Oladipo was able to provide proved pivotal as well. Again, the Heat, just a competitive team, bunch of leaders, a bunch of veterans, some keen young guys, a guy who just wants to get over the line. With Pat Riley there, was always, and Eric Spoelstra was always going to be a good combination. Other side of the floor, of course, Joel Embiid only playing the 4 games, so 19.8 points, 9.8 rebounds, for him. Tyrese Maxey leading the way, which does say a lot about where this team was situated in this series. 20.2 points, 2.3 rebounds, 3 assists. James Harden, another average player performance, and again really fizzled in that closeout game, or that season-ending game. 18.2 points, 6.3 rebounds, 7 assists. Tobias Harris, 16 points, 5.7 rebounds, 3 assists. That'd be well and good if he's the fourth option. When you're the third option and essentially playing second at times is going to cost your team a lot, and it did. Of course, the question is, is Joel Embiid the issue? Debatable. He's made a conference final. He's certainly made perennial second-round appearances. Is James Harden the issue? That is also the issue. I think it's a really continuous issue that has clearly arose all throughout Harden's career. A perennial second-round player. Tries to play his way into fitness. At this point, he doesn't have it. I really just think a lot of questions need to be asked to James Harden. Again, they won't be. He wants to play that second fiddle. He doesn't step up when there's a first option. This is just a guy who's designed to play basketball and get stats, not necessarily win the game, which is quite unfortunate. But for Philadelphia, back to the drawing board. We'll see whether they can try and acquire anything from Miami. They advanced through as comfortably as you'd like. And then in arguably the best playoff series, of these playoffs, the 7-game series between Boston and Milwaukee, the second seed Boston getting it done in Game 7 after trailing 3-2 in Game 5. They won Game 6 and they won Game 7. They were convincing in Game 7. Of course, Milwaukee had that 3-2 lead, just weren't able to seal the series. For Boston, leading the way, Jason Tatum once again, 27.6 points, 6.3 rebounds, 5.4 assists. Subpar shooting, but Jaylen Brown with some good support at 22, 7 and 4. Al Horford chipping in, Marcus Smart in his 6 games chipping in, Grant Williams getting it done. A nice solid effort there from the team, and many continue to ask that question there of Jason Tatum. Is he the man? Is he the next guy? Is he stepping up? Is he Kobe? All of those questions there, and it's fair to say through the first 2 games, 40, 41 minutes a night, putting up numbers, getting the job done. There's no reason people didn't believe that. Other side of the ball though, Boston defended really, really well and managed to put the clamps on the other side of the floor. Forced Giannis into a terrible Game 7. I don't think there's any debate about that. However, his series averages are rounded 34, 15 and 7 from 46% shooting, really lowering that field goal percentage. And of course, that's just something that proves of this Boston team. They play physical on these bigger guys who try and score. They get under their grill. They really force them to pick up their dribble, force them to take shots they don't want to take. It does prove a headache, and it does prove an issue. And again, that's just something that has to work. They have to work on later. Of course, for Durant, he's getting to the back end of his career, but for Giannis, big numbers like that's great, but that efficiency would soon change the outcome of this series. Drew Holiday, 21, 6 and 6, subpar shooting for him. Pat Connaughton, if he's stepping up to be your third option and your only other double-digit scorer, you are in some serious trouble. Again, you do have to question the fact that Middleton was not healthy. It does probably change the outcome of this series, but you can only play what's in front of you. Middleton was not available for the whole series. End of the day, Boston got the job done, advanced through to the conference finals where they took on the Miami Heat. On the other side of the floor, though, the Western Conference, Golden State defeated Dallas in a gentlemanly sweep. Dallas taking Game 4, that was about it though. Golden State winning Game 5, heading back to the finals once again. Steph Curry, or Magic Johnson, Western Conference Finals MVP. It's a sentence I thought I would never say. And understandably, too, had a couple of quiet games, but still convincingly the best player for the Warriors, around 24, 7 and 7 on 44% shooting. Klay Thompson, again, trying to find his feet, that 18-point per game mark, 18.6 points, 3.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists. Andrew Wiggins continuing to contribute, 18.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists. But when you have 6 double-digit scorers, Jordan Poole at 16.4 points, Draymond Green at 10.6 points, and Kevon Looney a double-double, 10.6 points, 10.6 rebounds, you are always going to see some reduction. Of course, Poole's points off the bench just proving to be pivotal as well. Other side of the floor, I don't think Luka Doncic was by any means embarrassed in this series. Subpar shooting, but around 32, 9 and 6, just getting it done there as well. Jalen Brunson, 18, 5 and 4. Spencer Dinwiddie, 16 and 3 assists. You had 12 points a game to Dorian Finney-Smith and 11.4 to Reggie Bullock. But Dallas, again, making that move with Christian Wood. They're going to want to get back to that Western Conference final. There's a lot of depth, though, in the West, especially heading into next year. We will see where they sit, but a really valiant effort for Luka in his first real big run. Really solidified himself, really proved himself why he's one of the five, well, probably one of the five best players in the NBA today. So Golden State, of course, advanced to the NBA Finals off the back of that series, and so did the Celtics on the back of their conference final series. With the Heat, everyone thought it was over heading into Game 6 until Jimmy Butler pulled out an absolute career game. Once again, he had some massive displays in this series. Had some quiet ones, but had some massive displays as well. But the number 2 Celtics beating the number 1 Heat, heading to the NBA Finals. Of course, Boston leading 3-2, Miami forcing the Game 7, and just a really tough game, not able to get the job done. Jason Tatum, another reasonable series, 25, 8 and 6. Good shooting there, good complementary scoring as well, and production from Jaylen Brown at 24, 7 and 3. It was also good to see Marcus Smart really putting the screws in, shooting poorly, but again, the Defensive Player of the Year, stepping up a little bit where he needed to. Also had 10 points a game out of Derek White. And again, the Celtics just proved to be that team that matched up with that team. Honestly, it came down to a couple of shots, a couple of plays. A series that could have gone either way. I don't think that the Heat were disgraced with their efforts, and I don't think Jimmy Butler was disgraced with his efforts either. I rounded a 25, 7 and 3. Of course, those subpar games really hurting him, but his big games were huge. And unfortunately, only one other double-digit scorer in Bam Adebayo at 15 points a game. A lot of other passengers from there. But don't get me wrong, the Heat are still going to be there. Jimmy Butler is still there. For how long, I don't know. But there is certainly, the crux of that team was always going to be competitive around this time. I said this back in the bubble a couple of years ago, but they're here. They're competing now. And again, they fall one game short of an NBA final series. I mean, what much more can you ask from, a Heat team that wasn't expected to get past the Nets? A Heat team that wasn't expected to get past the Bucks. A Heat team wasn't expected to get past, Philadelphia. So, when you're at worst going to be picked to be the 4th best team and you finish second in your conference, it's not a bad effort at all. And of course, finally, the big one, the NBA Finals, only completed in the last 12 hours, and it was the Golden State Warriors defeating the Celtics in 6. Many favoured Boston going into this, and a lot of chatter was about Boston and the crowning of Jason Tatum and how the tandem of Tatum and Brown is working, and they're just too deep defensively, they're just too big. We experienced one out on the day, and other than Boston's big win in Game 1 and taking a 2-1 series lead, they just weren't able to get it done, specifically off the back of massive efforts from Steph Curry and from massive efforts of Andrew Wiggins in Game 5. Game 2 and Game 4 belonged to Steph. Game 6 belonged to Steph. Game 5 belonged to Andrew Wiggins. It's clear why Steph was your finals MVP. And don't get me wrong, I think Al Horford is probably the unsung hero of the Celtics in their wins. Jaylen Brown probably the best player for the series, and Tatum certainly not living up to that expectation, that Kobe-level expectation that was set upon him to start the series. Your finals MVP, Steph Curry, finally a finals MVP, should have 3. Personally, the Delhi game and the 11-point game of 2018, Game 3, really costing the finals MVPs in those series. And realistically, if he had 3 finals MVPs, 2 league MVPs, that's when you start really having that conversation about just where he sits. But a finals MVP, 31.2 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 48.2 from the field, 43.7% from the stripe. 85.7 from the stripe, 43.7 from deep. Big contributions again, as I mentioned, Andrew Wiggins, 18.3 points, 8.8 rebounds, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, almost playing that Robert Horry kind of role that he played with the Houston Rockets in the 90s. Sub 45% shooting, that didn't really tell the story of just the kind of contribution that he gave to this team. Jordan Poole, 13 points off the bench there as well, 13 points a game off the bench. And Clay really never able to fire up, managed to hit a couple of shots here or there, 17 points a game. For him, on the other side of the ball, of course, the Boston Celtics, Jaylen Brown played his heart out for me. It was probably the most consistent and, vital player to that Celtics team. If they had managed to win that series, your finals MVP probably goes to a Jaylen Brown. 23.5 points, 7.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists. Tatum, as I mentioned, subpar performance for him. 22, 7 and 7. Really subpar shooting though. Struggled from the field. Less than 37% from the field. Less than 70% from the stripe. He led the playoffs in turnovers. I think he set an all-time playoff record for turnovers. Just a really bad run here. Burnt the candle at both ends, in my opinion. That's ultimately what's cost them here. Tatum just not able to really pick up, get the job done. Marcus Smart trying to do what he can as a defensive player of the year. Al Horford chipping in where he could, but when you look at what Derek White, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, what those guys weren't able to bring to the table, also proves to be really ill-effective as well. Of course, to the victors go the spoils, and the victors of the 2021-2022 season, the Golden State Warriors winning their 4th title in 8 years, their 5th title in franchise history. Steph Curry, Finals MVP. What more can you say? I think I'll end the video by summarising the fact that in my understanding and studying of the history of the game in the 75 years in the NBA, you know, there's plenty of talk about, is Steph the greatest point guard ever? Is he a top 10 player of all time? To me, no, he's not a top 10 player of all time, and no, he's not the greatest point guard of all time, but I think it's pretty easy, and I think it's pretty comforting in saying that he is probably one of the 20 best players to have ever played the game. Where you have him is up to you, but I think putting him in the top 20, top 25 players of all time now, I think that's very much solidified with his efforts there, and I think he definitely stands on the podium. Where on the podium you want to put him, for me, I have to put him 3rd. I think he sits behind Oscar and Magic. Magic 1st, Oscar 2nd in the point guard rankings. But there's no doubt about it, he's the greatest shooter ever. He's the greatest little man ever. He's one of the most selfless superstars of all time. And he's one of the greatest leaders of all time. And the fact that people doubted that Steph could once again win a ring by himself after he did it back in 2015 without Kevin Durant, before they gutted that bench out with Kevin Durant on that team, you know, I think it speaks volumes to the recency bias and the understanding of history on the NBA. But yeah, for me, Steph Curry, pretty easy Finals MVP selection. I think he's comfortably a top 20 player of all time. I think he's comfortably a top 25 player of all time, and I think it's pretty easy to put him amongst the greatest point guards of all time. I think he's on the podium there as well. That wraps us up for the 2021-2022 NBA season. The Golden State Warriors, your NBA champ. Steph Curry, your Finals MVP, and he's swung open the door once again. As you know, he hasn't left. He's still a chance, and he's still well in that conversation for best players in the NBA. Thank you very much for tuning in to the video. Hit like on the video, hit like on the channel, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, let me know what you thought of the season, what you thought of the playoffs, what you thought of the Warriors, where you see Steph on an all-time scale, where you see the Warriors on an all-time scale as a dynasty. Of course, they do have back-to-back championships, so you can kind of have that there, and had a couple of breaks between due to injury and whatnot as well. Subscribe to the channel, follow me over on Twitter, Justin_G_Bryan. You can follow the Facebook page as well, JB's NBA. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.